The Isle of Man Gambling Supervision Commission has suspended the licences of King Gaming Limited and Dalmine Limited whilst a criminal investigation...
The Department for Enterprise has confirmed eGaming company Derivco is planning to reduce the number of roles in the Isle of Man office. It's not yet known how many jobs...
A regulatory inspection by the Gambling Supervision Commission has resulted in a civil penalty of over £3.9 million being imposed on a local eGaming company. Selton Manx Limited, which surrendered its licence in May this year, was found to have committed multiple...
Senior business leaders have voiced growing unease about the island's economy, according to the latest Policy Voice survey from the Institute of Directors. 48 directors and senior managers responded, with two-thirds pessimistic about the next 12 months, producing a net confidence...
An Isle of Man-based eGaming company has applied to be dissolved just months after surrendering its licence and receiving a £3.9 million civil penalty. Selton Manx Limited was found to have committed...
Examples there of some of the stories we've had in recent months about financial services and eGaming on the island and the state of the industry. Now today in Tynwald, Douglas Central member Chris Thomas is to move that a select committee of 3 members should be established. He would want them to take evidence about whether, and if so, how, to establish and undertake a public inquiry or some other form of independent review of whether the regulatory, supervisory, enforcement, government and policy frameworks for the financial services and eGaming sectors suit the needs of our island. I asked Mr. Thomas why he's calling for such a select committee to be formed. First of all, tell me what your motion is, what you're hoping to sort of achieve out of it, and I suppose how you think it's going to be received as well.
So it's a motion on the suitability for the island of frameworks for both financial services and e-gaming. And I note a couple of things in the preamble for my motion. One of those is the significance for the island of the financial services and e-gaming sectors. And the other one is that the regulatory objectives in relevant legislation. So what I'm saying is that for 4 or 5 decades, financial services has been absolutely crucial for the Isle of Man. And in the last 2 decades, e-gaming has come to be crucial as well. It employs lots of people, an important part of our national income. There are lots of people who provide services from legal, IT, just processing things for those sectors. So if we do have problems in those sectors, it's vital we talk about them rather than just pretending we don't have problems. And the other point is that traditionally there's been an objective in our law. The regulatory objective has included the maintenance of confidence in the island's financial services, etc., through effective regulation, supporting the island's economy and its development as an international financial centre. And people suspect that that's no longer got the importance that it used to have. It's been replaced by meeting international standards. So there are lots of people in the Isle of Man who are worried for their futures because the 2 largest sectors, financial services and e-gaming, seem to be under pressure.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of businesses sort of closing down in recent years, a lot of jobs on the line as well. Obviously, we have the Moneyval evaluation coming up next year. I mean, how do you think that factors into all of this as well? Do you think that essentially after that we'll see change, or do you think we need to get ahead of it? Like, where does that factor in?
Well, I think we need to be talking about what Moneyval is likely to conclude, and we also need to be talking about now what we're doing for Moneyval. So the simple fact is that between 2019 and 2023, our national income, the total value of what's going on in our island economically, declined in real terms. For 3 consecutive years, it declined. In Jersey, it didn't. In real terms, Jersey managed to hang on. For 6 months or so, behind the scenes, I've been challenging things like the national risk assessment and who produced it, and are we doing everything based on what a small group of people have said is necessary rather than necessarily what everybody would think was in the national interest, because we're making choices that we might not need to be making. So I noticed that a leading advocacy firm in the Isle of Man wrote to members of Legislative Council raising some questions about some changes that were being made in conjunction with the consultation at the beginning of the summer on financial services regulation and e-gaming regulation. So I decided to put this motion down on the register 2 or 3 months ago. And what's amazed me is how little government has talked about it and how little government has been in touch with me about it. It's an incredibly important motion. I've been very conservative in the way I've put it down, because what I'm calling for is a committee to be set up to actually evaluate whether we need an independent inquiry, and if so, when, what form, and the like. And that's what my motion is tomorrow. I want to be able to take evidence from people who've been directly affected by this. I have had letters and emails since I put the motion down to say, you wouldn't believe how my life has been ruined over the last year. The suggestion that people worry about what's at the back of my filing cabinet and the paperwork being indexed properly rather than the big picture stuff. So I've been getting those messages. I've also been getting messages from 1 or 2 people in banking to say, it's putting pressure on our business. But the overall ethos seems to be we've got to do whatever government's proposing for the money val assessment. And there's just this vague talk about 10% off national income if we don't do well in the evaluation. But the simple fact is, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've lost more than 10% of our national income already. So we need to be very careful about the choices we make. Last week in Keys, we were talking a bit about the gambling legislation, and I made the point that the international standard didn't say exactly what we'd said it said in our legislation. So we have choices about how we interpret these things, and this committee is to take evidence about those choices.
And so, on the committee, then, what if that was backed by your colleagues and a select committee was set up? What's the bigger picture then? How do you want that to operate going forward?
So I've got the motion before Tynwald lays out very precisely the questions, the timing of the independent inquiry or review, in particular in relation to October's money val evaluation. And I believe probably the inquiry should be after the evaluation, but we should have the committee before. That's why I've set it down there. How we should take evidence, the balance between being in public and being in private, and how we should interact with government departments, regulators, other agencies, and beyond those. So one of the existing policy review committees is has already taken evidence from the Financial Services Authority and the Gambling Supervision Commission. I'm not stepping on their toes. They haven't gone beyond them as though. And what this leading advocacy firm basically told the MLCs was they were speaking up and they were writing to politicians because lots of their clients were saying they were frightened to say what they really thought because worried about regulatory response to them raising questions even rather than even never mind making assertions about what was going on to them. So this is a crucial moment in the Isle of Man. We've had good years since the 1980s based on financial services and then on eGaming. The economy in real terms has been declining in value. People have not been earning as much. There hasn't been as much employment. We need to do things purposefully and knowingly rather than just having things done to us.
Do you think then that there's, you mentioned earlier, like almost the international frameworks that we are moving around in terms of being a financial centre? Do you think there's too much regulation then? Do you think it's too overarching? Or do you think we're basically just losing the little guy in there who's just trying to make a living? Yeah,
it's the little guy who's suffering most. Increasing regulation throughout history has always favoured big people because they can spread the costs of compliance officers and systems over a large amount of business. So there is that going on as well. But it also comes down to what the whole point of an international financial centre is. If we're exactly the same as London and Dublin, what's the point of doing things in the Isle of Man? It's a lovely place to live, but there has to be some other selling point for doing business here rather than just being a lovely place to live, it seems to me. Well, at least let's find out. Let's have a committee and begin to have the process to see how seriously we need to take this. Would a fully fledged independent inquiry be necessary, or is there another way that we could do a review, or perhaps a review is not even necessary? This committee at this stage is just to take that evidence, act conservatively and responsibly and decide and make recommendations to colleagues in Tynwald about what we should be doing and when we should be doing it and how we should be doing it.
How are you, I suppose it's a big question, but how are you feeling going into that Tynwald sitting tomorrow? Are you confident that colleagues will back you?
I'm not confident at all. What amazes me over the last 2 months is the only contact I've had with government is to try and persuade me not to move this motion, because everybody's already stressed and working so hard to get through Moneyval. So that's been the message that's been put on to Department for Enterprise members, Treasury members, members of the Legislative Council. I'm one of the longest standing members in Tynwald, and what I'm saying is we need to do things purposefully, responsibly, conservatively. We don't need to say too much tomorrow, but the right way ahead would be to set up this committee to evaluate what we need to do after the Moneyval evaluation at best, probably, and if not, perhaps even before. But I think my own feeling is we need to have this committee to work out how we should respond immediately after the evaluation in the next after the election as well.
I imagine you're probably going to get people tomorrow in their remarks saying, like, let's revisit this idea post money eval, whereas what you're saying is let's just get that framework in place that regardless of how this evaluation goes, we can respond very quickly.
When you get a letter from a leading advocacy firm saying nobody's listening to us and there are fundamental mistakes, you have to take it seriously. I've taken it seriously as a person who's long in tooth in the House of Keys, and put this committee down. Hope people won't say too much. We've had international crime coming to the Isle of Man. Government now says, we're no longer a home for international crime. That implies we once were. I don't think that's ever been the case. I think we basically always wanted not to be a home for international criminals. So something went wrong in Department for Enterprise, or about the way that they were doing, they were carrying out their business. Something went wrong in the regulators, is my premise. So I'm responsibly proposing we set up a committee to evaluate what sort of inquiry we need, so we can be honest about what went wrong, such that our economy is contracting in real terms because of changes in financial services and eGaming, whereas it's not in Jersey, for instance, one of our leading competitors.
Okay, I feel like we could go into the nitty-gritty of this for hours. Should we switch topics completely and look at another one of your motions for tomorrow? Should we start with the Tynwald Golden Anniversary, Millennium of Tynwald? I mean, let's start like we did before. What's this motion and why have you put it forward?
Okay, so the crucial thing is it's the Golden Anniversary. It's the 50th anniversary of an event that took place in 1979. Most people remember that event very, very fondly and warmly, whatever age they were, in as much as there were nearly 400 special activities for that event. My motion isn't about the 1,000 years. It's about 1979, because the result of 1979 was a huge number of things. We had new footpaths created. We had a national arboretum that's now got sculptures in it created. We had all sorts of events during the year. We had presidents and kings and queens from around the island coming to visit us during that year. People remember that year very fondly. At the beginning of the summer, I got communication from a group of quite important people saying, "Chris, we love your motions. Why not doing it? Why not do us a good news motion next year?" And this is my good news motion. Little secret: 1979 is actually a made-up 1,000 years. There's not really that much evidence that 1979 is a real year, but 1979 Millennium celebrations meant that we had 600 to 700,000 visitors in that year, which was more than we had previously and loads more than we've got now. And it's above the target that we've got inside our visitor strategy. So to me, building on the success of events being organised by local authorities, by businesses, by community groups, by Tynwald itself, we should be able to plan for some really good news at the end of the next administration. And the essence of good planning is to start early enough, so why not start it now? My understanding is that government's given ministers a free vote in this item, and I can't see why anybody would vote against it. Although I do note Laurie Hooper thinks it's a waste of money already.
So, I mean, my next question was, how are you feeling about the possibility of this passing? It sounds like, you're throwing the gauntlet down of surely this is a bit of good news, is what you're saying.
So the Tynwald Committee has met about it, and the Tynwald Committee has decided that they're going to amend it to change the way that Tynwald committees are involved, which is good news, I think. And to me, this is so much in line with destination management and the visitor strategy. It would be hard not to do it. The crucial thing is to remember that in 1979 the Isle of Man was hard up, we were short of cash, and they managed to do wonderful things. The year of the Manx language is a bit like that. We don't have lots of money to spend on it, but it started really well and it's looking very promising. And I'd like to think that I've set the challenge out there, that we now need to be achieving things with a target of 2029 and beyond. So, for instance, the Arboretum and National Park has always been a proposal since after the Second World War to make much more of our island, all of the mountains in the middle, into a national park like they've done in the Lake District. We had that idea slightly before some of the national parks. It just hasn't happened since the 1940s in the Isle of Man. Why not really go back and look at footpaths and the way that the symphony orchestra and the way that the language and the way that the local authorities actually go about using the money? I'm not talking about job creation at the Department for Enterprise here. I'm talking about giving any money that's collected from the public purse to people who will actually spend it in line with the aims. But what I'm even more looking for is for the whole of the community to get behind this and celebrate our island 50 years on. I mean, obviously we need to make changes to Tynwald Hill. Things have happened in those last 50 years, so this would be a good target to make those changes by as well. Perhaps the Legislative Council will go down a rung or two on the hill, given everything that's happened in recent years. But we'll see. That's not for tomorrow. Tomorrow, this is a good news item which I hope people get behind and support.
I suppose, you are talking to someone who loves a commemorative T-shirt or a mug. I'm a big merch buyer at gigs, so I'm all for an anniversary. However, you will get people, naysayers, obviously sort of being like this, you've kind of invented an anniversary here of an event. But do you think that, you've instilled it in me here, Chris, in the last few minutes. Do you think people will just get behind this idea that it's almost like to twist another phrase of making the island great again? Here's the things that are really good and we can embrace them.
I'm not going to co-opt that phrase.
No.
but you've nailed it really. In the couple of years that they only had between March 1977 and January 1979 to prepare it last time, and everything they wrote said, they wish they'd started earlier, but the community really got behind it, and people all over the place. We've got records of it, really good records in the Public Record Office and in the museum. There's 140 box files of how everybody from the Women's Institute to the Girl Guides to the commissioners to different firms got behind it. People perhaps remember the Viking boat coming. That was sponsored. People bought oars and people bought planks for it and the like. So I'm just laying it out there. If we've already got the Island Games in 2029. The Island Games was a spin-off in some sense because after 1979 we had the idea that we would have these special years from time to time, and a few years later we had the first Island Games in the island. Heritage events have come from it. If it's not the right way to do it, so be it. But to me, golden anniversary is a very important anniversary in anybody's life, and why not celebrate the made-up year of 1979? Good news about 1979, by the way. The Isle of Man Parliament was certainly older than 1,000 years. The Queen actually came here in 1955, and she said in Tynwald that her dad had told her that the Parliament had been round 1,000 years. So who are we to argue with a young Queen in 1955? So it's older than 1,000 years, and it's more than just Norse. It's got a Gaelic element to it as well. If you go to Iceland and Norway and the other Tynwalds, they don't have fairgrounds alongside them like ours does. And the literature I've read suggests because it's got Gaelic connotations as well as Norse connotations. And then it's obviously got the British English connotations since with the way that the army comes here and all of that sort of stuff. So it's much more. It is our national day. It's our national celebration. And we haven't had the best few years. Why not target a celebration in 1979, 50 years on?
Fair enough. Okay, sign me up for a T-shirt. Right.
Thank you.
I'll buy one. Right, okay. So, and then your third motion tomorrow is about, just to switch tracks again, residential land availability. Can you just run me through this one and, again, why you've put it forward?
So, if truth be known, the two most important issues in Tynwald at the moment are Number one, the North West Area Plan, because that's about population, housing, the economy, where people live in the Isle of Man. And number two, the minimum wage debate, because that's about the quintessence of our economy. Residential land availability study is in one sense, the most boring document you could probably have. It's been updated annually for 18 times since the beginning of what's called the strategic plan, and it basically talks about how many planning approvals there have been, how many houses have been built, how many other spaces have been converted into houses for people to live. We've got a recent study published perhaps a month ago now. I'm putting it down for debate and asking what it means for the next strategic plan, but also for the current strategic plan. I've got to be honest, it's linked to the vote that's tomorrow, without debate, on the North West Area Plan. Great work has been done on the North West Area Plan, but some assumptions have been made in there. And some policy decisions have been made in there which I don't think are coherent with this government's policy. So I'm intrigued to know how the vote goes tomorrow, and this motion is to begin thinking through the future alongside things like the consultation on the 2021-2041 strategic plan.
And so just for sort of an explainer for listeners, the vote will come before or after this motion?
On the order paper, the vote is before this motion.
So when we get to this then...
But when I put it down, I wanted to put it down so that people could focus on it in the preparation for the vote.
Yeah.
I mean, it could still be that government's going to spring on us a surprise of an amendment. This could be part of an amendment, but at the moment, the way it's scheduled, government hasn't indicated any amendment to the vote, and so this won't need to be part of any amendment. But I put this down in a tactical way for this month to focus attention on that vote. I mean, Mr. Ashford's basic argument, his fundamental argument, is that we need to approve the North West Area Plan to protect other land. I think that's rubbish, and I said as much, and lots of other people have said as much. We are expecting some information circulated to us about that. That's one point. I guess his subsidiary main point is that we need land zoned, and what this residential land availability survey says is that we've got enough land for 10 to 15 years already zoned. So if the people don't come, we certainly don't need more land zoned.
Whether or not that motion will be successful will be the will of Tynwald. That sitting gets underway today at 10 a.m, and you'll be able to listen across, as always, on our AM 1368 network via DAB or online at manxradio.com.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.